Hey, what's going on, guys? It's History Obscured, and I'm back with another video. Alright, so today's topic, I'm going to be going over a well-known or prominent, should I say, missionary, okay, that goes by the name of David Livingstone. Alright, now before I get into the topic, the reason why I'm going into this topic today is more so going into the observations of the Europeans and how they really viewed Africa to kill any form of stereotypes that have been associated with Europeans looking down on Africa as an uncivilized continent, or better yet, the people being uncivilized throughout the continent. All right, and that has been the image that's been portrayed on Africans throughout the years. All right. But little do you know, when these missionaries went to Africa and they basically wrote down what they saw in their journals, there was a lot of missionaries that traveled to Africa, that when they got there was many things that they saw which made them look at Africa as a well-organized people that were living on the continent based on the various nations that they went to. All right. And there's many missionaries, okay, whether they were missionaries or just, Europeans from various parts of Europe that were traveling down to Africa for, various reasons. But for the most part, it would be to support economic expansion in Africa, for the basis of it favoring the European nations. Because as you should know, the reason why Europe went to Africa was not for the sake of dealing with the people justly, but more so to expand their territories in Africa and to take control of the resources and the people. All right, but today I'm going to be touching on David Livingstone, who was a missionary that traveled mainly through the parts of Western and Southern Africa, and just to speak about his accounts and the things that he saw. All right, especially with the relationships that he was able to create while he was there. All right, so David Livingstone, he was actually born in Lanarkshire, which is in Scotland, near the city of Glasgow. All right, so he was born in the early 1800s, the 1813 to be precise. All right, and he is actually noted to be one of the most famous missionaries and explorers of the 19th century. Okay, and while he was in Africa, he spent about 30 years in mainly the southern and central regions of Africa, and he traveled through countries such as Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Angola, Mozambique, Malawi, Tanzania, and Namibia. All right, so these were the regions that he traveled through. Now, again, like I mentioned, he traveled through these regions and he saw a lot of things, and mainly the things that he observed were from a positive standpoint. Again, I'm touching on this video because I'm showing you that many Europeans that traveled to Africa saw Africa in a different lens, and for the most part, it would be like that for all the Europeans that traveled there. But again, these accounts that have been noted have not been exposed to a high degree. So that's the reason why I'm going over this video, to show you that this man gave a lot of props and respect based on the way that Africans conducted themselves. Okay. Now, just going back to Livingstone, he immersed himself amongst the African peoples based on the countries that I just listed. All right, and for the most part, his objectives would be to learn the customs of the people, okay, which is kind of like a custom for most Europeans that traveled down to Africa, all right, for economic expansion, but also learning the culture of the people to understand how they could subjugate them and turn away from their custom. Again, one of the strongest colonizing methods is to understand the people that you're colonizing. All right. Now, again, David Livingstone may have not been at the forefront of pushing colonization in Africa, but he was definitely in support of European expansion in Africa. All right, and he was mainly there to push Christianity, okay, which is why he was referred to as a missionary. But anyway, going back to the point, all right, he learned many of the African customs, but he also depended upon their hospitality, because he reported that the African people, in terms of the way that they conduct themselves and the way that they deal with foreigners, is with hospitality. That's a natural attribute that many of the African people that he encountered were about. All right, that was in their character. All right, and it was known amongst many African nations. So we actually helped him throughout his travels in Africa. All right, especially when it came to his survival. All right. Now, one thing that he did encounter, for the most part, was organized societies. All right, so we're talking about organized societies, prosperous communities, and the people that he met there, he regarded with admiration and much affection. Okay, so we're talking about a man that is in Africa prior to, the colonial application of the Europeans. Okay, because during the time of the 1800s, yes, slavery was heavily in Africa, but it wasn't at the stage where many of the kingdoms that were there were absorbed with European influence. All right, there were still many African communities that were able to maintain their culture, all right, and their civilization with being civilized, all right, by applying their customs amongst the people. And this is what David Livingstone saw, all right. Now, when Livingstone arrived in Southern Africa in 1841, many Europeans viewed Africans as uncivilized, like I mentioned before, all right, and they also believed that they were incapable of advancement. Now, this would be more so in relation to racism and their reasons that they would use to justify why they needed to take control of Africa, all right? But that was never really the case, okay? These were just false accusations amongst the people to basically say, listen, these people are uncivilized, they do not have the mind or the intelligence to take care of themselves, so we are going to take control and teach them how to be civilized. That is basically the bait of colonization. But David Livingstone opposed that based on his experiences, okay? And he noted that that was not the case, that they were not uncivilized, okay? And that they were actually well organized. But again, he understood that there was an objective when it came to European domination. All right. Now, Livingstone, again, like I mentioned, he traveled to various African countries. All right, and one of the African countries that he spent some years in was Botswana. Okay, and one of the major, there were a number of things that he witnessed. Okay, but a few of the major things that he observed was, while he was in Botswana, he observed organized villages, systems of law and injustice, public assemblies and councils. He witnessed agriculture production and the way that they dealt with agriculture in regards to the knowledge that they had in relation to it, extensive cattle wealth, iron working skills, and a major one that he witnessed was strong family structure. Okay, now the reason why I've highlighted that is because when you look at the black family today, especially in the Western world, there's a lot of disorder within the family structure, especially with fathers not being in the picture. All right, and again, it does go into oppression and, destroying the mind of the African man, okay, to not have the mindset of the way that their forefathers conducted themselves, okay. And a lot of that goes into having an identity crisis, especially in this side of the world where a lot of the history is not taught to the people. But again, David Livingstone saw the complete opposite when he was in Africa. All right, he saw Africans taking control of the family structure and ordering it correctly. Okay. He was also impressed by the ability of the jurisdiction within the various communities on how they would settle disputes. Okay, so again, with the chiefs, with the councils that were in place in the various countries that he went to, but mainly in this focus point, which is Botswana, he saw that the way disputes were peacefully dealt with based on discussion and consensus. He was amazed by that. All right. He also believed that the political systems in Botswana demonstrated major wisdom and social stability. So we're talking about communities within the nation that were structured and well maintained based on the morals that they applied within their governing and political systems, which created social stability. So there was no disorder that he saw within the communities that he traveled to. There was a lot of order. There was not really much crime going on because of the way that these matters were settled. Okay. Now, again, like I mentioned, he traveled to many different countries. Okay. Now, there was another country, or I would say another tribe of people that he became familiar with. All right. And they are known as the Macalo people. All right. And they reside in modern day South Africa today. Now, he built a friendship with a man named Chief Sekulutu. Okay. And by him developing this friendship with Chief Sekulutu, one thing that he observed with this chief, all right, amongst the Macalo people, was major intelligence, which he often praised. He also respected his dignity, and his leadership. All right. So these are the attributes that he observed in this leader. All right, that was overseeing the people. Okay. He also described him as being thoughtful, being inquisitive, and eager to understand the wider world. So this was a man of much knowledge and wanting to grow in wisdom and understanding. And this is something that David Livingstone, being a European, saw amongst the African people. Okay, and this kills, again, like I mentioned before, this kills any form of lack of intelligence amongst the African people or them being uncivilized people. He did not see this when he encountered these people, hence why he noted it down in his journal. All right. Now, one thing, again, when it comes to the list of things that he saw within the Macalo people or within the kingdom, he was impressed by the political organization. He was also impressed by the military discipline, loyalty among the people, and efficient administration. Okay. So again, he's just noting down what he's come across amongst the nations that he's traveled to. All right. And so far, up to this point, it was all positive. There was no negativity surrounded by it. Okay. Now, another country that he visited was Angola. All right. And he encountered numerous African rulers and communities while he was there. All right. And what he described was chiefs were exercising authority over territories. So you had order amongst the rulers within different territories in Angola. He also observed well-ordered trading systems, established settlements. He also saw strong political alliances amongst the people. All right. And one thing that really blew him away was that he noted that the communities were peaceful and organized. So there was a lot of organization, but there was peace within the organization. So commonly today, you see a lot of black people, they don't get along. They don't know how to get along, to be at peace with one another. There's always some form of argument or disagreement. And again, it's more so in the Western world. I wouldn't say it covers much of Africa as much, but definitely in the Western world, you can see the division amongst blacks. But what he noticed at this time was there was none of that. There was order, there was peace, and there was structure. Okay, and that's one thing that he examined. All right. He also observed the political organization as well, which was another thing that impressed him. Okay, he also noted that the people around Lake Nyasa were governed through recognized authorities. All right, and he also found that chiefs and subordinate leaders and village and districts possessed chiefs, okay, whose authority was respected. Okay, so when it came to chiefs in position that were taking oversight of the people within the nation, they were respected. There was no form of trying to overthrow the leaders or disrespecting the leaders amongst those communities. The people understood their place and they respected the authority. Okay, so that's one thing that he, saw. But again, similar to what he saw in amongst the Macalo people, again, the laws and the customs were at a high level. Disputes were settled according to accepted traditions and customs. And when it came to the chiefs, they were commonly consulted amongst the elders and advisors, all right, before making important decisions. So there was a council when it came to major decisions that needed to be made, all right, in their government. Okay, and it shows you the order, the level of I don't want to say civility, I don't know if that's a word, but the level of greatness amongst the people and the laws that they applied, all right, which made the nations that he traveled to great and well structured, all right. And one thing that he also saw was social stability. So this really goes against European initiatives towards Africa in terms of them taking control. It shows you that they did not take control because the people were not able to take care of themselves or their government or to take oversight of the people. It was really because they just wanted to take control of the landmass and have more of a say when it came to manipulating the resources that these countries produce, right? And that's what it was really based on. But David Livingstone did not see any of that. Now, in terms of him being against European expansion, I highly doubt that. All right, I highly doubt that. But one thing that I do want to mention, which was the reason why I made the video, is the fact that all the stereotypes or the negative stereotypes that have been created by Europeans concerning Africans and them being uncivilized, this is a perfect proof to show you that a European that went to visit different nations in Africa did not agree with that, because he saw that the thought process behind them being uncivil did not align with what he saw, neither did it align with what he experienced. Okay, so that's basically it on David Livingstone. All right, so again, this man here, European, who came to Africa and witnessed a lot of order and structure and had nothing but positive things to say about the country, but yet he was a supporter of European expansion in Africa, and he also was in support of pushing Christianity to colonize the people. So again, it doesn't really make much of a difference as to why he went there, because it didn't differ from any of the other missionaries that came down to Africa. But the one thing that he did confirm was that the people were a civilized people, and many of the accounts or the false accusations that were put upon the people were not valid. All right, so that's it. It's History Obscured. Hope you enjoyed the video. Again, I've got more content coming, so make sure you lock in. And yeah, man, make sure you lock in, man. I've got a lot more stuff coming. And yeah, I'm gonna just keep these videos rolling in. So keep supporting and lock in for the next video. All right, so that's it from me. History Obscured. Peace.